Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about it. I already know y'all saw the thumbnail, or y'all probably saw when I put the poll up to see what video everybody wanted to watch next. And y'all probably thought like, man, this dude talk about inflation is a scam and this is just some clickbait stuff. But nah, let's just kind of put it in a perspective here. Hey, y'all already know the disclaimer. I'm a licensed attorney, not legal or financial advice, just letting y'all know what we got cracking, what's going on. So considering that words are my trade and evidence is my trade, I don't like to talk about anything that I really can't point to or prove with some type of hard fact to support whatever the position is that I'm trying to make. So before we dive in, y'all have to understand that with every situation in life, no matter what it is, there's always the fact to bullshit ratio that you have to figure out. Well, DFD, what the hell is the fact to bullshit ratio? The fact to bullshit ratio is the ratio of truth versus bullshit in any story that you're gonna hear. Your kids do some dumb shit, you know what? There's gonna be a certain fact to bullshit ratio. You gotta figure out what that ratio is. If it's a case you have in court, fact to bullshit ratio, the evidence figure out what it is. So once you can get a good idea of what the fact to bullshit ratio is in the particular thing that you're looking at, then you can really see what a person's, what a party's underlying objective is. So we're gonna talk about, hey, in that ratio, the facts are always the truth, but there's always a little bit of bullshit. So you can have both. It's not either all facts or all bullshit. There's gonna be some facts in there, but there's also gonna be something that smell bad. So you gotta understand that there's a ratio, and hopefully you got enough game, you got enough information where you can figure out what the ratio is, and hopefully the BS, I've been saying bullshit the whole time, now I wanna say BS. Hopefully the BS isn't too high. So let's go ahead, let's dive in. Let's talk about why inflation is a scam, is a little bit of gamesmanship. And we also going to ask the question like, do the feds really want people to lose their jobs? It sounds like I heard Jerome Powell say that, but I'm going to play it back. I want y'all to take on it. We're going to talk about it. Let's get it. What's going on? I'm Marcus. You're at the channel of the Debt Free Dad, where we're talking financial takes, financial topics, financial opinions, and I'm letting y'all know what we have going on in the household of the Debt Free Dad as we are on our journey to financial freedom, first generation millionaire status, all of that other good stuff. That's what we're trying to do, and I wanted to take you all along for the ride. So in today's video, let's talk a little bit about inflation. I think everybody knows what inflation is, but in short, we're going to break it down to the easiest point, to the beginning. Inflation is essentially when your dollar loses value because the price of everything else goes up. The price of gas goes up. The price of food goes up. Interest rates go up. So if you got a variable rate credit card, your payment is going to go up. That's what inflation is. As things and the price of goods and services increase around you, you have less buying power. So $100 10 years ago could buy you a lot more than $100 today because of inflation. The price of everything went up, so that $100 has less purchasing power. Okay, now that we know what inflation is, let's talk about why it's a little gamesmanship and a little BS with this inflation that's going on. Now, we all know the CPI data, they release it every month. Inflation is at 9% one month, the next month 8.7%, the next month 8.3%, the next month 8.4%. Inflation is high as hell. Typically, on average, is about 3% per year, but this inflation is just crazy. You're talking 8, 9%. That means things that you're buying cost almost 10% more than what they did a year ago, a year and a half ago. So let's talk about the gamesmanship behind inflation and how it is a little bit of a hustle into it. Now, most people statistically feel inflation in these two places. Now, there is a third place, but these are the two primary places where people are going to feel inflation. At the gas pump, gas is high as hell because everybody got to get gas, and at the grocery stores. So early on in 2020, as everything was kind of going wild and you got pandemic and supply chain issues, a lot of the inflationary costs that we were informed about, the general public, was due to supply chain issues, due to goods. It's, early on during the pandemic, a lot of people switched to more goods than services because people were in the house, people were home, so people were buying goods more as opposed to getting services. So we were told that supply chain issues were the reason for a lot of the inflated costs with regards to goods and services. I mean, you had things coming from overseas and China, Japan. You had a military conflict that's going on. So these are some of the things that have increased inflation. So let's just think about this from a common sense standpoint. You have business A, and business A sells widgets, okay? Business A operates, sells widgets at a set price. Inflation occurs because of supply chain issue, all of this stuff. So if inflation is, let's say, 5%, or let's say inflation is almost 9%. Inflation is 9%, damn near what it is today. If inflation is at 9%, before inflation, you sold your goods for, you sold your widgets for $100. Now you have 9% inflation, because of the shipping and all of these other things. So now your goods cost an extra. So now your goods that you're selling, your widgets, cost an extra 9%. So if inflation really worked like that and businesses and corporations operated like that, you would only see the cost of the goods go up to account for the excess cost related to the supply chain issues and to inflation. So let's take a look at groceries. Again, groceries and fuels are two of the three places where people feel inflation the most. So let's take a look at some grocery stores. Grocery stores and gas are two places where a lot of people, they account for 66% of the inflation that most people are going to feel. Let's take a look and see what are the profits for a few grocery stores out there, a few grocery store corporations. Let's take a look and see how does this play, how did this gamesmanship play into this inflation that's, got a little gamesmanship, a little bit of BS, a little bit of scam going to it. Let's take a look. Okay, the first grocery store numbers and data points we're going to look at is Albertsons. Now, I'm just looking, I pulled random grocery stores. I never seen a damn Albertsons. It may be something out in the West Coast. But here are a look at Albertsons profits, okay? Albertsons grocery store net income has increased 192% since 2019. So sales came in at $54.5 billion for the first 9 months of 2020. Next up, we have Publix. Publix has showed sales of $35.4 billion the first 9 months of 2021, up 25% from the $28.4 billion that occurred in pre-pandemic times in 2019. And last, we're going to take a look at Kroger's, okay? Kroger's $104.8 billion in sales the first 3 quarters in 2021, up over 12% from pre-pandemic levels in 2019. Okay, now that is an interesting statistic when you hear it. I mean, let's think about it. Let's backtrack. Let's take a look at Albertsons like we talked about earlier. Their net income has increased 192% since 2019. So let's just kind of take this into perspective. Again, with that example, if you have a company selling widgets, inflation is up 9%, usually you would see the cost of that particular good go up at a minimum 9% to account for the inflation cost, which could be caused by a bunch of things. Government regulation, it could be caused by supply chain issues, whatever the hell is the reason. But this is where it gets interesting. Their net income has increased 192%. You know what this means? This means that companies can't wait for inflation to occur because they can jack the hell up out of their prices, and consumers are going to buy because everybody hear the repeated mantra of this is inflation, this is inflation. So let's just, it is what it is. Companies are gaming the inflation system, the inflation scare. Inflation is a real thing, but the price that your goods and services are increasing are going a lot of time into the CEOs, into the corporation's pocket. It is what it is. Now, I know what y'all thinking. Y'all like, man, this dude just got these stats that he pulled up, that he just reading. But no, most people try to hide things in plain sight. And essentially what that means is they aren't trying to hide it at all. A lot of times we won't look to see what the real information is. So I'm actually going to read you a quote that I found from a CEO, which is going to be very interesting. Let me go ahead and find it so I can pull it up. At a September 20th investor event, Iron Mountain Incorporated CEO Will Meany explained that where we've had inflation running at a fairly rapid rate, we're able to price ahead of inflation. That is, increases prices at a greater rate than the high recent rates of inflation. As Meany put it, raising prices obviously covers our increased costs, but a lot of it flows down to the bottom line. He also noted that this didn't just apply to his company. People are seeing what FedEx, UPS, and others are having to do to actually manage their business and pass on that inflation. Bigwig CEO who just flat out said, like, hey, even though inflation is there, we can price up over inflation and capitalize on that bottom line, which we just saw because, like I said, one grocery store had a 192% increase in profits from 2019 to current, which is freaking ridiculous. The second part of that quote, so let me pull that up. It says, for that reason, Meany has long been doing my inflation dance, praying for inflation. So, I mean, it is what it is. Corporations are going to capitalize on inflation. Inflation is real, but there's some scam, there's some BS, there's some gamesmanship going on because a lot of corporations are going to price their goods and services way above inflation because, they can just get away with it. It is what it is. Now, let's talk about the second part of this video. Are the feds actually trying to create a reduced job market? Do they want excess unemployment? Is that a thing? Well, I'm going to play this clip from the Fed Chairman, Jerome Powell. Y'all let me know what y'all think. I'm actually going to break down and interpret what he says, but let me go ahead and play this clip first.
Wages are running at elevated levels, and so we think by our policy interventions, what we hope to achieve is a period of growth below trend, which will cause the labor market to get back into better balance, and that will bring wages back down to levels that are more consistent with 2% inflation over time. We are accountable to the public through Congress. That's a very fundamental, important aspect of our work, but we do not. We focus solely on the goals that Congress has given us, and that's what we're going to do here.
Okay, let's think about this. The first thing that he said that just didn't make sense to me is that wages are running at an elevated level. I don't know about y'all, but who the hell do y'all know, or have you all been getting wage increases that are at least on par with inflation? I don't think there's absolutely any fact out there to support that wages are running at an increased level. But that was the first thing that he said that just kind of made me say, what the hell is this guy talking about? And again, Jerome Powell is definitely a smart guy, but that just made any sense. Wages aren't running at an increased level. Okay, his next statement was, through policy, they want to experience and get what they call growth below trend. Let's think about that for a minute. What is growth below trend? Okay, so I'm going to break it down and interpret what he says. The trend line is here. Employment, this is the trend line. This is the trend of where employment is on average. Growth below trend is growth that is below what the average is. So they are actually implementing policies. Listen to what he said. Rewind it because it's not me making it up. They are implementing policies, and they want their policies to create growth below trend, growth below the trend line. If the trend line is what's average, they want to get growth, but they want the growth to be below the trend line, below that average point. And by doing so, it will bring wages back down to levels that are consistent with 2% inflation over time. Think about it. What he said, if I break it down to the simplest terms, we are going to enact policy to have job growth occur, but it's going to be a slow growth and it's going to be below what the normal is because we want to drive wages down so that wages can be where they should be, consistent with 2% inflation. He didn't say anything about his policies actually reducing inflation. He said his policy and the expectation is for his policy to reduce wages. So wages are down. We're consistent with 2% inflation. This is crazy. Am I the only one hearing this, or am I out of bounds and interpreting this? Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. I don't know. More people being out of a job, meaning that more people would be more desperate for work. Therefore, corporations and companies can charge lower wages. I don't know. That's what it sounds like to me. Y'all tell me what y'all think. Okay, now let's take a look at this second clip, okay? Now, I'm not an Elizabeth Warren fanboy. Actually, I'm like, Elizabeth Warren wouldn't make it I don't have a list of favorite politicians, but I do give Elizabeth Warren a lot of credit because she asked the best questions out of people when they're sitting in the hot seat before Congress. And they're just common sense questions, not anything that's, too complex. But she asked basic common sense questions to get basic answers to things that just don't make sense. So I do give her credit that she asked some good ass questions, really good questions. So let's take a listen in on, we know two of the biggest areas where inflation occurs is at the gas pump and at the grocery store. We already looked at the amount of profits that grocery store companies have made since the pandemic. We've already seen quotes from CEOs who are saying that they're on the record of saying that we're going to increase our prices over inflation because we can bring that back and increase our bottom line, i.e. profits. Let's take a look at this question and response by Jerome Powell and Elizabeth Warren. And I mean, credit to Jerome Powell. He was being honest, but he's essentially going to say, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but he's essentially going to say that he's aware that his policy isn't going to do anything to curb inflation in the two areas where inflation is felt by most Americans. Let's take a listen.
Chair Powell, will gas prices go down as a result of your interest rate increase?
I would not think so, no.
That matters because gas prices are one of the single biggest drivers of inflation. Energy prices overall drove a third of the inflation last month, but the Fed's tools, as you say, have no impact here. Price of groceries is up nearly 12% this year. Americans feel the pinch. No matter how much groceries cost, people still got to eat. Chair Powell, will the Fed's interest rate increases bring food prices down for families?
No, I wouldn't say so, no.
Okay, y'all see it. So, hey, I wanted to give y'all the real data. So, one, y'all wouldn't think I'm just on here making clickbait. It is what it is. Those are the words that came out of Jerome Powell's mouth. Those are the words that came from CEOs. We looked at the profits for grocery store companies, various grocery store companies. So, the inflation is real, but there's a little bit of gamesmanship. There's a little bit of a hustle. And you got to understand these policies that are in place. I mean, they said it out of their mouth. The feds are looking to essentially stifle the labor market to get wages back down consistent with where 2% inflation is on average, which makes no sense. Now, I do have some theories of why would they want wages to come down? Like that's just a question. Why the hell would you want wages to come down? Me personally, I think they want wages to come down because it's something crazy. I looked it up, but the statistic, and y'all can take a look out there, just Google it, but like 70-something% of people in the US are in favor of some type of labor unions. There's been a lot of labor unions issues with the railroads, with Amazon, and a lot of these big companies. And if you can drive the price of wages down, if you can make the amount and availability of jobs, you reduce the amount of jobs out there, more people need jobs, you can reduce the wages, and it kind of really stifles that big talk and that growth of the labor unions being developed and being created, that labor litigation, because people are going to have to take employment at lower wages with less benefits out of a necessity. That part is my opinion, but everything else I told y'all that we talked about in this video is fact. I got one more data point to put up because I know a lot of y'all are going to say, especially and I'm a capitalist. I get it. I already know what the game is. But what I'm going to do is tell y'all, hey, this is what it is. This is what's going on. So when we think about it, when we talk about it, a lot of people probably saying, well, no, corporations are getting extra profits. And with those extra profits, they have to pay more for the employee because the increase in costs associated with having employees on board. But, for everybody who thinking that, y'all already know I got a statistic for it. because I wanted to show y'all that that's really not the case. Okay, if we take a look on the screen, normal and recent contributions to growth in unit prices in the non-financial corporate sector. Now that's a whole big thing and it's all complex. I'm gonna break it down for you at its simplest standpoint. The dark blue is what you have from the second quarter of 2020 to the fourth quarter of 2021. The light blue is what the average was from 1979, damn, before your boy was born, from 1979 to 2019. Okay, so if we look at the top right, corporate profits are, look at how much corporate profits have grown from the averages from 1979 to 2019, 53.9%, okay? The second one is non-labor input costs. That grew 38.3%. And back in the day on the average from 79 to 2019 was 26.8%. Here is where this data point gets interesting. Let's look at this bottom one, unit labor cost. Now, this is the cost that corporations are paying for their labor, for their employees through wages, through benefits. So let's take a look at what it was on average from 1979 to 2019, 61.8%. So that essentially means that 61.8% of a company's profits were used to bolster up, hold in place their labor force through wages, through benefits, through pensions, through health insurance had companies who had health insurance. Now let's take a look to see where we are currently from 2020 up into the fourth quarter of 2021, 7.9%. So if we look at that top one, corporate profits, and the bottom one, unit labor costs, corporations are making big ass profits, but the amount of their profits that they use for the actual labor force is reduced. Let's think about it. Wages don't go up with the cost of inflation for most people, for a vast majority of the people. A lot of corporations, I mean, we've seen the stories of Walmart and Target having people who work there, but they qualify for state-assisted health insurance and benefits because, Walmart has policies of, hey, you know what? We're only going to employ people part-time because we don't want to give them certain benefits. So, hey, there's a lot of gamemanship out of there. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. I know this was a long video. I know this was kind of a wild video, but y'all let me know, am I bugging on what Jerome Powell said? Did it make sense to y'all what he was saying? Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. As always, I appreciate y'all for tuning in. Y'all take care. Be blessed. Peace.